Okay, this is my oral presentation for economics. How does modern-day international trade differ from the world described by Ricardo in the model of comparative advantage? Colin Ableson, that's me. I split up the first slide to two slides because it just looked nicer. Why? So why is this question important? And finding the answer to this question is imperative to understanding international trade and the state our global trade is in, most notably in understanding how far along the world has gone through the free trade market and the neoliberal idea of free trade. Why it's an economic question? It's an economic question because the Ricardian model of comparative advantage is an all-encompassing international trade model specifically tied to free trade and the macroeconomic policy of nations. It is mostly an economic policy, due to its free trade possibilities and the possibility it sees for international trade even when it was created in 1817. Ricardian's comparative advantage model is different from modern international trade due to the fact that free trade has not yet encompassed global trade. The world is very far from a complete world of free trade. The Ricardian comparative advantage model assumes a world of completely free trade with how it looks at countries specifically using what they're good at making and what they can make for significantly less capital than anything else, what they can make and then trade to other countries while other countries trade what they might be missing. This is only possible in a world of complete free trade where no country has to only rely on itself for certain items. However, due to the fact that we are not in a complete world of free trade and are very far away from it, we have not yet reached this absolute economic free trade theory, and instead we are slightly there, where some trades are in fact based on which country can make it better. China is often the winner in these scenarios, despite them definitely not being a huge fan of free trade. And overall, it is not yet possible to have the world of free trade while too many governments are completely against it, most notably the United States, whose revolving door of governments are sometimes completely for neoliberal free trade and other times completely against neoliberal free trade. What are the limitations to answer this question? It is very difficult to know what several governments are thinking. Many governments wish for free trade, and others definitely believe it is an evil that will lose them their power and end the world. Now, these may not be correct assumptions, however, they could be the assumptions held by certain governments. It is impossible to know that, therefore it is also impossible to know how far along the world is reaching free trade. What assumptions must change for this answer to be incorrect? The entire world would have to accept free trade without our consistent tariffs and trade wars and all the other economic policy that is most commonplace in the modern world. And this is near impossible to happen in the next 5 years or something. I would definitely assume this would be much farther down the road when Ricardian's model actually has some weight again for it. How confident are you that this answer is correct? Extremely. The recent trade wars undertaken in the last few years prove just how far the world is from a neoliberal economic paradise. The American-China trade war is a good example of free trade not being on the table for several countries. And sources.